Hello and welcome back to ID Boxing with me, your host, Rob Tebbutt. Just like to remind everyone before we get started to please like, comment and subscribe. Turn your notifications on for more boxing content. So, quiet week in the sport over here. I am joined, as always, by our esteemed panel of guests, George Groves, Barry Jones and Dec Taylor. Going to get straight into it. Going to come to you first, Dec. How are you?
I'm great, mate. How are you?
Very good, very good.
We've been busy, though, because we've got a podcast.
Oh yeah, you can't. What is your podcast? What is your?
I'm glad you asked. It's George Groves Boxing Club, and here he is.
It's obviously not doing very well.
Yeah,
They've had to come on here to promote it.
They've
had to come on one struggling podcast, promote another struggling podcast.
That's the way of the world, though.
It certainly is. George, always a pleasure. Thanks very much for coming back down, making your ID Boxing debut. How you keeping?
Yeah, I've been here before with you for something else.
Yeah, but we don't
talk
about that.
It's great. I'm really excited. I love it. I was wondering. You sent me the new setup. I think I retweeted it.
I think so. Yeah.
I think I actually retweeted it, and I took a punt saying this is going to be great. I didn't know, obviously, but I thought
sounds like your pod.
I thought exactly. we're all struggling. We all need help. And you've come dressed for the occasion. Fucking.
Please don't.
Do you know what I mean? Me and Barry thought it was we've got nice smart.
I'm not as sophisticated as you. I had poppers. I can't do buttons.
You got poppers, yeah?
I
didn't know you did poppers.
So
Yeah, you still get poppers, mate.
You
Got to know where to buy them.
You still get.
So when you get angry now, you're just going to break your buttons. I get angry, and I just
Right, we do have a lot to get through, and we are pressed for time today. But yeah, no. Before we get started,
You look pressed for time. Right?
I am pressed for time. I didn't even have time to get changed.
Nothing in that cup either.
Anyway, yeah. Before we move on, how is podcasting life? I have been trying to catch up where I can with yourself. And
You've listened to everyone.
Absolutely all of them.
It's really, really good. Really, really fun. Very professional, isn't it, Dec?
Hugely professional.
Yeah. Little studio setup. We don't do the camera business because, well, if I'd known this was the effort for cameras, we would have gone cameras. But no, it's audio only because I think that gets in the brain a bit better. But we have boxing related people come on week to week to have a little dive into a boxing related subject, and it's going well. It's growing, and it's
So they tell us. We just had Harlem Eubank in.
I bet that was interesting.
Very interesting. Coming out tomorrow, this week. It's like this week.
Okay,
timely one. And we just got line bikes, a pair of us, from our studio to this one. It's very
I did see that.
new age.
You were arriving. You both were going through that. It looked very, very nice. Yeah. Before we move on, how do people watch that? So how do people listen? Because I'm going to be listening to that, but obviously I don't know because I watched all of it. I don't need to know. I know exactly where to get it.
George, do you even know?
It's the George Groves Boxing Club, and you can get it wherever you get your podcasts. I listen to mine on Spotify.
I do Apple Music, iTunes. Apple Music don't exist anymore.
Apparently
where do you listen to them, Barry?
MySpace.
Right, that is enough of the plug.
Yeah,
wireless.
Everybody check out the George Groves Boxing
check
Club and listen, subscribe, and make sure you share across your socials. Barry, nice to see you.
Come on, let's get on with it. I don't care. I don't like you. You don't like me. Thank you.
Oh shit!
That's a very good point.
Let's go.
Let's dive straight into things. Of course, Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn. We were all sat around here. Well, we were sat around here last week previewing the fight. Looking forward to it. I think it's fair to say. I think everybody was excited.
Another prediction I got wrong.
Yeah,
it didn't happen.
Another prediction. we'll let you off for that one, I think. But Barry, we're going to come to you first. Been quite a week in British boxing.
Oh, it's been appalling again. Boxing just loves to kick itself in the face. Like, punching itself in the face is not enough. And again, it's been another dark week again for boxing. But I'm not surprised, to be honest, with it all. I sort of try to take a bit of a more objective view rather than just say everyone was wrong. Everyone just should be villainised. The promoters were disgusting. Then they go ahead. The boxing board, showed cowardice, and if Conor Benn's a cheat, then he should be banned for life. All those things are sort of true, but also, I would say when you're involved, when you're in it, your whole focus is about getting. I forget about the news that everyone might have known before. I mean, the coming days when it all came out, I think everyone's in the boxing board and the promoters were just thinking about getting the show going. That's all you think about at times. And the fighters, they just get the fight. They just want to fight. You almost don't even think about the moral aspect or anything else. You just get the show to go. And in that mode, luckily, they took an objective view and took the right view and realised we can't, in fair conscience, let the show go ahead. if something happened to somebody. And it's if someone's cheated, they've cheated. Though within a sport full of cheats, I tell you what I have struggled with, the hypocrisy of boxing people. Not just boxers, trainers, managers, people who've been trainers and managers before, and everyone is jumping on it, and rightly so. But no one's clean. I mean, you haven't got to have to take a drug to not be clean. We've all been tainted with something, me included. I've never taken a drug in my life, as it goes. I took mushrooms when I was 12. That was different.
That explains a lot.
Wicked.
Yeah.
You think I'd be, but I never got involved in drugs after that. You think I had the best experience of my life, and just thought I'd go out on a high, literally on a high.
What did you see on them mushrooms?
I just laugh at
The
always.
completed
Were there any UCAD testers?
drug scene for you.
I was like 12. We had them in the fields because in Wales, everything's free in Wales. Prescriptions and non-prescription drugs are free, by the way. And I just had loads of mushrooms. Me and my mate Christian G. Shout out to Christian G. And
Are these field mushrooms like grown there and you just had a little
They're
crack?
just in
Or
the field.
someone come in with a bag that's got
no. We just sat in the field eating them.
That works, yeah?
Well, I just walked for hours. And walked and laughed for hours.
And there he is,
And I'm still here
in
now.
Oxton.
And the only thing it did do, I think it stunted my growth.
Well, that's...
No comment.
So you obviously didn't have mushrooms, Dex.
No, I've never tried them.
What did you?
Not a
What
single
was you
mushroom.
taking at 12?
No. Nothing.
Helium.
He was on the good old proper anabolic stuff.
He was on the Clomifene from a very
all
young
right.
age. George, we're going to come to you now. Just same question, really. Obviously, we're going to dive into things in as much detail as we can and trying to address or assess every outcome and situation. But I think one thing that is without question is that this has been a terrible look for British boxing.
Yeah, I think so. I'm always there at the core to try and defend British boxing, to be honest. And to a degree, sport in general. You know, we had the documentary come out about concussion with rugby this week, and no doubt it's not going to take long before it arrives at boxing. Got to be honest, I wasn't entirely comfortable with this fight in the first place because they made a scene about Eubank Jr coming down in weight, and it's not like he just sort of went, "That's what it is, sign away, don't mention it again." He's walking around with a 60% t-shirt on. He's telling him that he's in danger because of a rehydration clause, and if something did happen after that fight, then how does anyone really live with themselves, His dad was very vocal about it, but sort of it felt like came to the party late. I don't know why he didn't know this was the case beforehand. I don't know what information came his way that made him change his stance or just speak out. But yeah, I mean that's usually where I can sympathise is with hydration. Do you know what I mean? And there are, again, it's like, for me as a fighter, an ex-fighter, you've got the rules. That's the only way you can live with your moral compass. I mean, I think we spoke about it, literally even us two here, for something else once. Is you've got these are the rules. And then you're on the right side of the rules or not. Ultimately, you want every advantage possible going into a fight. But within the rules. It's always got to be within the rules. Otherwise, you're cheating, and if you're cheating, you can't live with yourself morally, If I can choose my opponent's gloves and I choose him a nice big padded pair of gloves and I choose myself a nice spiteful, horrible pair of gloves, I'm at advantage. I could cause more injury to my opponent than he will to me. But as long as that's within the rules, as bizarrely as that sounds, you can live with it. But if you are knowingly taking a banned substance, that's not right. People ask me off the bat, Robert, should it go ahead? And I was like, yeah, why not? Let it go ahead. It's an exhibition fight anyway. It's one big guy coming down to fight a little guy. They're messing with the weight divisions. It's all just for entertainment. We've had KSI, who we saw earlier in the building, had his YouTube fight on DAZN pay-per-view, and this is sort of the next step up before some real big legitimate fights in the UK. There's no belts involved. It's just born rivals as such. But I got to admit, like, after speaking with Deck and even just being here with you guys and other people, it's like, that initial fighter response of me of like, I don't want to miss out on the fight. Should fight anyone, get on with it. You do have to take into account the risk element, and I don't know enough about the drug and if there is some ambiguity about it, if there is some shady grey area, if there was a genuine mistake or whatnot, then the fight can't take place.
Just going to just to jump on that and try and clear it up for people who may be watching who aren't kind of as up to date or up to speed with the drug Clomifene. Clomid is a name of it from an over the counter. There is no legitimate logical reason for it to be in the body of any male at all, let alone a combat sports athlete.
So it's not something the body can produce naturally.
It's not something that it's used for testosterone, or it can be used to re-kickstart the body's testosterone after a testosterone cycle. It can also be used as a masking agent to mask the presence of other banned substances in the body. It can also be used as a blocker for your estrogen in your body. When it blocks the estrogen, the body naturally then tries to produce more estrogen, which in turn produces more testosterone. There is no legitimate, logical reason for this to be in a fighter's system at all. End of story. After the news broke from Riyadh from the Daily Mail, shout out Riyadh, great reporting from the Daily Mail throughout last week, and of course we're still very much away from the end of this. I sat down in front of the laptop for a couple of hours and went through, previous instances where athletes, not just combat sports athletes, had tested positive. It was rife in the NFL a couple of years ago. It is a female fertility drug. It is used to aid fertility in women. These NFL players in the 2019-2020 season who were popped with it said that it was due to their own fertility and they wanted to have children with their partners. The studies that followed there said that was just inaccurate and it wasn't able to produce that. They were banned. It is banned both in and out of competition in UCAD, which we'll come on to later on, particularly with the Billy Joe Saunders oxylofrin case for his bout with Demetrius Andrade. But yeah, Clomifene, it is used in conjunction with testosterone or instead of after, and it is banned. It is a banned performance enhancer. It is not something that you can find in a nasal spray or something like that. So that's kind of a little bit of a backstory. That's my camera there. A little bit of a backstory into the drug Clomifene. Deck, before we go on, any further than that, you are sort of reputable journalist in the field. Your thoughts on not only the test being made public, but what we've later found out about it being available several weeks beforehand.
That was the most troubling bit for me, was the fact that if it hadn't gone in the paper and if Riyadh hadn't done that story, would anyone have known about it outside of the people who already knew at that point, including the board, from what I can gather? Mm-hmm. They knew it. Yeah. And it was only going in the paper that obviously put pressure on everyone to pull the fight. And that's a worry, that they're getting this information and they're not acting. Basically, I would assume because of legal problems. Because if you pull the fight and because UCAD haven't banned him, and then are you legally obliged to do that? He hasn't actually failed, he actually hasn't been charged of anything yet because the B sample hasn't been tested, right? That's
correct, yeah. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to go to our first throw, which is when I spoke to Eddie Hearn on the Wednesday at the workout. Here's what Eddie Hearn had to say around Conor Benn's adverse analytical finding.
Right now, there has been no doping violation by Conor Benn. There is no suspension of Conor Benn. And until that happens, we should reserve our rights in that respect and also decide whether the fight takes place on Saturday. All those findings have been seen by Team Eubank. They've taken their own independent medical advice, of which they're happy with, to proceed with the bout. I would like the British Boxing Board of Control to be comfortable, but I would also like them to be responsive.
With regards to the B sample, he's not tested. He's not had any doping violations at the minute because the B sample hasn't been tested. Is that correct? Why is the B sample not been tested yet?
Because just a timing issue.
When was the test?
We're talking about a couple of weeks ago.
So how long does it take for a B sample to be put through?
It depends on, once you hear the reasons why that opening was required by a scientist, you will see why. I can't say too much on it at the moment, but ultimately that sample will be tested by a specialist, and all those conversations have been taking place. So the bigger issue here, Rob, is, in all honesty, is the technicality of VADA versus UCAD. British Boxing Board of Control do not acknowledge VADA testing. We had a very similar situation with Billy Joe Saunders, where he had an adverse finding on his VADA test. Massachusetts banned him. The British Boxing Board of Control said his UCAD test was clear. We do not acknowledge VADA. So they need to make a decision what they want to do. If they don't suspend him, which they haven't and can't, he is clear to fight. So there's a whole process that I can't give you the answers for right now, because that process has to, and you're talking about a young man's career, that he will want this process to be done absolutely to the T. And from there, we need to decide what the board are going to do, because there's been plenty of precedents in the past where this has happened, and he is not suspended. But again, I want them to be comfortable.
How did he get into Conor Benn's system?
It's a question for him and the hearing and the scientists. When you see the levels and you see the results from this test, as Team Eubank here, you might have a different opinion. But right now, you know, that's a process he's going to have to go through.
VADA is historically known as the gold standard of testing. I remember the Dillian White situation where he failed a UCAD test but passed the VADA test. Okay, adverse analytical finding for a UCAD test, but then the VADA test, he was kind of cleared on the basis of that. He passed that. What changed here? Why is UCAD apparently the be-all and end-all of the UCAD test here?
You've never seen me criticise UCAD testing in terms of its quality.
UCAD follow the WADA code, correct?
Yeah, but at the end of the day, all his UCAD tests which have been around. By the way, the VADA result has to be analysed and go through that process. All I'm saying to you is that the UCAD testing that's taken part for this fight, of which there has been many, are negative. That is the agency that the British Boxing Board of Control rules apply by. Don't forget, Rob, Conor Benn, Eubank, Matchroom, we implemented VADA testing. We paid for VADA testing in addition to UCAD testing for this bout. They're a very good agency and there'll be a process that's followed. And I'm not saying he's positive, he's negative, whatever, or he's guilty, he's not guilty. I'm saying there's a process that has to be followed, as we've seen with fighters before who people have said this and that and they've been found to be not guilty. But I'm more specifically looking at the rules here to say Conor Benn is not suspended by the Board of Control. Therefore, he is clear to fight. If you're not happy right now with this fight, we need answers as to what is the process moving forward. And Conor will have his own fight on his hand, or out of the ring, with the other situation.
Final question from me. If the British Boxing Board of Control don't sanction this fight, will you take it to Luxembourg? Will you take it to Gibraltar? Is there any contingency plans?
No, I mean, look, there's many, many different options around what we could do.
List them.
Sorry?
What are the options?
Many. I mean, I've had them today. Injunctions, different commissions, all which would allow the fight to take place. The British Boxing Board of Control are our governing body. I want them to be happy and comfortable. But they also need to give us answers of the process moving forward. If you're not suspending Conor Benn, if there's no doping violation right now, if you're not going to suspend Conor Benn, what is the process for this fight happening? And that's what we need to know.
So that was Eddie Hearn. In his own words, a few weeks ago, they found out about the adverse analytical finding. And as I put to him and as he agreed, it's not a violation because until the B sample is tested, it's still an adverse analytical finding. Once the B sample comes back, and again, to give people a little bit of a backstory as to what the B sample is, it's the same piss in two different cups, or the same sample in two different cups. So the 99.999% of the time, your B sample is going to come back the same as the A sample. Deck, what we were talking about before, so I'm going to put it to you now. The notification to Chris Eubank Jr. and his team, Conor Benn and his team, Matchroom Boxing, Wasserman Boxing, and the British Boxing Board of Control, September the 23rd, which is 2 weeks before the fight. As I put to Eddie, why wasn't the B sample tested then? And you think from the outside looking in, it can only be for fear that it's going to come back positive and create a violation.
Yeah, and they can do that. They could have done this week, but they've already done the fight, made the money, got the subs, all that sort of stuff. That's, from a cynical point of view, that's clearly what's happened there, as far as you can tell. So that's a concern, that is put above the fighter's health, which is what we're always told, is that the fighter's health comes first and stuff. Clearly, it seems that that's not the case here. That was my main concern, and what I hope that comes from this is that some sort of reform in that process, that UCAD and VADA are in cahoots a bit more than they are now. Clearly, they pay for VADA testing because it must be assumed that UCAD is not quite up to it. UCAD have this vast umbrella of athletes that they have to take care of. They don't care as much about Conor Benn and Chris Eubank as we do, or as they each other do. So they pay VADA to do this more expansive testing, and then they get a result from them, which should ring alarm bells, and then they just ignore it until after the fight. That seems what would have happened here. So that's, for me, that's the big problem here. And how often does it happen?
Didn't he take a UCAD test as well?
Yeah, but he passed all his UCAD
tests. So with regards to VADA, again, we're breaking down a lot of the intricacies with regards to the different testing bodies. VADA they follow the WADA code, but there's also an extensive list of VADA where there's certain substances that are not included on the standard UCAD, which we follow the WADA code, which again is significant to this case. So VADA.
What are you on about? VADA, you got a fucking list or what?
VADA
voluntary.
Yeah, so VADA is Voluntary Anti-Doping Agency, and WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency.
What's the difference?
So, as I've just explained, the WADA,
you lost me.
The WADA code, which is what UCAD follow.
Yeah.
has these substances. VADA has those substances as well, the voluntary anti-doping agency, but it also has a few more as well. So it's why it's considered the gold standard of testing, because
why they pay the money as well.
Yeah, and it's more extensive and more stringent. Now, a lot of the consternation around this, and again, something that Eddie Hearn has spoken quite openly about, is similarities between Billy Joe Saunders' case and Demetrius Andrade. Now, Billy Joe Saunders failed a voluntary anti-doping agency test for oxylofrin, which was found in a nasal spray. Now, the key difference here is that what Billy Joe Saunders tested positive for, and again, he didn't receive a ban by the British Boxing Board of Control and UKAD, was something that was not banned out of competition. And as George will know and Barry will know, that is considered in the UK on the day of the fight. So what Billy Joe Saunders tested positive for was outside of competition, but under VADA, it is banned out of competition. So his fight wasn't allowed to go ahead due to VADA being part of that. But the UKAD, from UKAD and the British Boxing Board of Control's perspective, he's not committed a violation. Whereas what Conor Benn has tested positive for, Clomifene, is banned at all times. In competition, out of competition, WADA, VADA, DADA, whatever you want to call it, Barry, it's banned at all times.
I don't call it anything.
So that's the significant difference between all of it. George, just want to kind of throw it over to you as obviously an ex-fighter. If something like this happened in your instance as Chris Eubank Jr., where your opponent had failed or produced an adverse analytical finding, how would you feel 2 weeks out? Not going to go ahead with the fight? How much is the money? Financial penalty? How would you have felt? How would you have gone about it?
Well, I think my gut feeling would have been, I need to fight. I want to fight. I've done all this prep. There's a lot of money at stake. There's a lot of money I'm going to be essentially losing. And it doesn't matter whether someone says to you, you'll sue him and you'll get that money, or sue this person, sue that person, you will get nothing. Like, all you'll do is spend an awful lot of money in a legal case that it's already so complicated and so, unclear. For him, Eubank, I'd imagine the best thing to do is just draw a line under it, and that it's not happening. His dad has not been content with this fight, so as his family, a close member of his team, I know he comes in and out of his team, but that's someone who definitely his opinion he respects. I think it's ultimately he'll probably go to bed better with knowing that the fight's not happening now because of the what's come out, as opposed to going through with it. I'm sure his loved ones will definitely feel that way, but it's got to be so horrible, guys. You know what I mean? I don't know what the purses were, but you just imagine that DAZN have gone big on this. You can tell that just by how much money they must have spent on promoting this fight, that the purses have to be representative of the magnitude of the fight that they're trying to create. I can even see these guys, rather than being on a split percentage of profits, is usually what happens with a matchroom type deal. They've probably got some chunky guarantees in there where you're guaranteed to get this much, whether it sells or not. But fighters only get to fight at this level. You only get to fight twice a year, really. So he's lost out on half a year's salary. But it's not just that, because you can only operate at this level for a handful of years, really. So he's missed out on a huge opportunity to not just increase his profile and his stock, but financially. So I mean, boxing wise, I don't think it would have done anything for him. He's fighting a welterweight at the end of the day. It's a catchweight sort of gimmick fight, but and sure, he has got his profile wise, he's probably come out better than he ever could have. He's gone from beating or fighting Conor Benn, which might have been a lose-lose. So if he doesn't get rid of him straight away, he probably might get slated, and if he does blast him away, then he might get slated as well. So he's come out in that respect better than ever. But I can imagine he's just livid, absolutely livid. He might go through, what are they, the 7 stages of grief? Like 1 minute he might be in denial, and then he might be angry, and then he might be the next. I'm sure I would, because boxing, you're usually worried about someone cheating you financially, someone robbing you financially, but not cheating and putting your health at risk. So, but it I don't believe that 80-90% of the fighters out there are dirty. Like, I certainly was, and I don't know anyone who was. But these instances are not good for the sport. Definitely not good for the sport. And then you're living it in real time. You expect everyone else around the promotion, the promoters, and the people who are there to govern it to act appropriately. So and then it's up to yourself, Rob, and maybe us two to sit there and analyse it after.
Barry, just want to touch on what George has said there, to handle things appropriately. Do you think this was handled appropriately?
I think the right decision was made at the end of the day. And you try and focus on that. Everyone did the right thing. But no, wasn't, was it? Because it should have been. And you're talking millions, not just for the boxers, for everyone involved, for promoters, TV companies, or whatever. And it's so you can half understand. It's not excusable. You can half understand why, if they can get away with it, like anything, like George mentioned earlier about things you can get away with that are inside the rules.
Yeah.
So if Matchroom were thinking, well, they haven't failed a UCAD test, whatever you want to look at that, then they're not outside of the rules, and they just go with it, and we'll just keep going until something happens, and the worst scenario happened for them, and they got caught out. I think that's what it looks like to me. And I think every other promoter would have done the same thing. That's the truth. Until if they thought they could have got away with it, I think that's just how it is. I think everyone's taking a massive moral high ground now, saying I would just pull the show straight away. I understand. You'd like to think you would, but when there's millions involved, we know the greed of everyone in boxing, not just promoters, boxers. We're all greedy. We're all selfish people. Boxing's the most selfish sport you can ever find, and you have to be like that. Everyone has to be. Boxers have to be selfish because you have to think about yourself. That's the way it is. So, even though it's wrong, I think everyone would have done the same thing as them. They got caught, and now everyone has to pay the consequences. That's how it works. I don't know what the consequences will be for everybody. I think it ultimately was all fall on Conor Benn. And
is that right?
Well, yeah, he took the drug. I think other people need to be accountable for their actions. I understand that, but ultimately he's the one. If he knowingly took the drug, he's knowingly taken something which is giving him an unfair advantage in a sport that is dangerous enough as it is. That's, even if he is the smaller guy and all those things to help you, that doesn't fly. You take a drug, you get caught. Ben Johnson took a drug to be the fastest man on the planet, and it almost worked. And he was the fastest man on the planet until he got caught, and then they stripped him of that, and he paid the consequence, and it was fair enough. He took that risk, and he got caught. The difference with this sport is that the guy next in the opposite corner could end up dead. Very rarely, and almost highly wasn't going to happen, because truth is, Chris was probably going to beat him anyway. Quite comfortable.
That's the thing. I think probably this decision laid at Junior's feet. They've said to him, we can go ahead with the fight, or we can pull it. What do you want to do? And there's always many ways it's going to cap, and he probably had to sit with that decision for a while.
I remember my fight with Freitas, he never made the weight. It's still different. He never made the weight. I swear to God, he was there. Even Ian Dark said in Sky, he was there. He never made the weight. And I said, I don't care, because I don't get paid if I don't fight. I don't fight, okay, and I fight someone for the vacant title like next month, and I maybe win it again. But I want to fight today, because in this sport there is no tomorrow, potentially. Like me, fell a brain scan, you don't defend the title ever again. So you just take what's in front of you, and that's what we've learned in this sport. We just take what's right in front of you. All this down the line. Well, I'll worry about that when it comes. You just take what's in front of you, and promoters are the same. We're all the same, and they think the risk of losing that, this fight might never come about again.
But Dec, is that right? I mean, you've got this. That's surely what the British Boxing Board of Control are there for. No, they're to take it away from the fight. The fights are completely built differently. They're gonna do that. They're gonna have that. But this is where you need the board. And look, the board are getting a lot of credit for coming out and producing their circular after the story broke. But knowing that for 10 days or whatever it was beforehand and not making a stand. Isn't that what the British Boxing Board of Control are there for?
Should be, but at the same time, they are dictated to, or they're linked with UCAD in that sense, and he passed all his UCAD tests. Like, so that's what they're saying. That in their code, it's like UCAD, he's passed his UCAD test. This is an external force. Although saying that in their rules, it does say another viable body or whatever.
WADA accredited lab,
Yeah,
which VADA is. And,
So-
and that's again, sorry to interrupt, and that's where the British Boxing Board of Control refer to UCAD, who refer to the WADA code, and Clomifene is banned.
And therefore VADA as well.
Yeah.
So that
And
so
that's why VADA and UCAD are now cooperating.
and they're probably worried as well because and UCAD similarly, because they can't really compete. It's the same thing happened with Tyson Fury. They can't really compete financially if it does come down to like legal battles and stuff like that. They can't afford like a massive battle with a multi-millionaire boxer or something like that. But they have their rules, they have their guidance and their protocols, and to all extents and purposes, Conor Benn was inside those at that stage. What does trouble me though is they did know this well before it came out, and it took a story in the Daily Mail to force them into action, as far as I can tell, which is a concern. Like, the newspapers are therefore like dictating, like I tweeted, Riyadh changed the whole course of the sport, because without him doing that story, getting leaked from wherever he got it from, then that fight goes ahead. Who knows what happens in the fight? But like,
he owes me money, that Riyadh.
Yeah.
I was working on the weekend.
Exactly. So was George.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
everybody's on their money.
but you never know what might have happened in that fight.
No.
And so without the story, everything changes. So that's a massive concern. Like, that it took a newspaper for this to happen. That's my big takeaway from that. And the board, yeah, you expect more from them, but you know, they're getting hammered in the same way that Eddie Hearn is, in the same way that everyone involved in the promotion is. But in the end, they did, like, the pressure came on when it went in the paper, and they were like, okay, well, we need to, at least at that point, they said, okay, this is not. But even then,
But that was only on the Thursday. On the Wednesday, when the story came out, we heard. I mean, we're going to show the address, because it wasn't a press conference. It was kind of an address dressed up as a press conference. There was no questions from the promoters, but it was put that this was in the best interest of British boxing. This is in the best interest of the British public. Yet 24 hours earlier, as we've seen, Eddie said, you know, we have options. The options being an injunction in the High Court. Options being taking it to a Luxembourg or a Malta or an Austria or Bieber. Like, so yeah, they got there in the end.
Yeah.
Did they get there out of the best interests of British boxing and the sport? Or did they get there because they weren't able to secure an injunction if they went down that route in time for the fight? Like,
I must say, at this point, I do find the thing with Eddie, he's obviously, the board knows, he knows that the board knew this, and then they changed their stance with the circular. No wonder he's pissed off. Because he's like, but you knew about this 2 weeks ago. Now you're waiting fight week for a newspaper story, and now you're pulling the plug on it. So I kind of understand what he was saying in those initial interviews. 'Cause it all happened very fast. So he's in front of you, and everyone's chucking questions at him. He's got to say something. He's thinking the board knew about this. Why are they only just saying this? That's as far as I could tell. So then I understand where his frustration lies. He's like, why the fuck didn't you tell us this 2 weeks ago? Or why didn't you say this?
When you're in it, I think as well, you don't think.
No, you're not
saying
thinking straight. It's happening quickly.
no, of course
You're
not.
defensive, aren't
Yeah.
you? Straight
of
away.
course. I think maybe, I mean, again, kind of guessing here, but I think potentially from Wednesday night to Thursday morning, which is again when we or Thursday afternoon when we saw Eddie again, obviously he had changed his stance on it, and I think that would have been, you know, we've got through the kind of the Wednesday where things have been thrown at us from all angles, and they've sat down and thought, okay, well, actually, this is how we're going to have to go about this now.
Also, I'd say a defence of everyone involved in, if they are genuinely working for the fighters, and Chris Eubank Jr, for example, has said, I'm fighting regardless. I don't care. I'll fight. It can be an exhibition. We can do bare knuckle and fight to the death. I don't care. Well, I'm fighting Saturday. Then it's up to them guys to navigate a way to make this fight happen. You know, if he has said, you know, I want to fight. I've spoke with Conor. He's fucked up, but we're gonna go ahead.
Everyone else is comfortable.
How we can do it? How we can do it? We're going to get some backlash from a lot of people. A lot of people are not going to be comfortable with this, but we want it to happen. And me as an ex-fighter, as a fighter, I genuinely don't know how I would be thinking and feeling. Part of me is thinking that I would be like, fuck it, I'll have to fight. I'll have to fight.
Of course you would. It's too close not to want to, isn't
that
it?
amount of money as well.
And as you say, Eubank has probably known about this for 2 weeks as well.
Yeah, he did. He would have known.
So he's sitting on this during it. He's probably talked it to death amongst these people at this point, and he's concluded that, oh, fuck this, I'm not pulling out. I'm having this fight. there might be a contingency plan if it does break, and how does he want to come out of this in terms of his image. But he must have backed himself for the fight. There must have been something else that's broken down at some point for this fight not to have be taking place. And as Eddie said, and the promoters would have said, there's options, there's ways around it. Maybe they just couldn't get them over the line, so the fight had to get pulled. But in a defence of the promoters, maybe they were just pushing for Junior's sake because he wanted the fight. I mean, there's a lot of money at stake, of course. Not just for the fighters to lose out on, for the promotion and
the broadcaster
and everything, you know. So everyone's got a vested interest. Everyone wants, you know, an event to take place. But yeah.
But it's also important that, you know, that didn't happen, because it's that once the precedent is set, then the guy who's taken the drug is the smaller guy who's an underdog, who everyone really who knows boxing thought he didn't really have much of a chance to win. But if that was okayed, then the next time this situation comes along, it might be the guy who is the favourite, who is the bigger, powerful, already mean monster. And then it's an issue, because then the damage could be seriously. No, that's the thing. It has to be. You just can't allow it. Once you open the door to that,
it shouldn't be down to the
I'm sure there's lots. There's lots of fighters taking drugs.
At all, like you guys are mental. That's why you're fighters. Like you think about things completely differently, and at times in that kind of tunnel vision moment, that's of course how you're going to feel. Otherwise, you wouldn't be fighters. You wouldn't be able to get to the level that you both got to in your careers if there was any part of you that went, no, we'll just go back and we'll go away and blah, blah. You have to be in the moment, and you know, fighters are a different breed. It has to be taken. And for somebody on the British Boxing Board of Control to have had that information, and then only look, whatever people are going to hear and say. I know Eddie had, I think, mentioned in his interview with Coogan that the British Boxing Board of Control had already made the decision to pull the fight. Okay, well, great. But what we know is that the story broke and then it was done. So you can say what you want beforehand anyway, but the facts are that. So it has to be taken out of the fighter's hand, in my opinion. But we've spoken about Eddie's address. Let's see it. Here's what he had to say on Thursday while we were gathered at the Eubank Jr. Conor Benn press conference.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for the delay. I was very tempted to slip out the back door for a beer, but wanted to come and see you guys, and thanks for waiting around. Been a very difficult day, 24 hours, 48 hours. We were looking forward to an event that has really captured the imagination of the British public, and a fight that had so much history, myself and Calla and Wasserman Boxing so excited for, but obviously we wanted to come here today and formally announce that Chris Eubank Jr. against Conor Benn has been officially postponed. I want to make it clear that Conor Benn is not suspended by the British Boxing Board of Control, and we do feel that he hasn't been given due process like many others in this situation before him. I also want to clear up so many different reports from journalists and outlets that we've seen today about us being in the High Court this afternoon, us considering other commissions. This is just not true. We took our time with Wasserman Boxing and we made a decision that we felt was in the best interests of the parties involved. This is a sport that is very, very dear to us, a sport that we've been around our entire life. And whilst we were desperate for this fight to take place, for the fans, for the undercard fighters, we also made a decision that we felt we had to at this time, especially considering the interest of the sport and the British public as well. Calla, a few words from you. Obviously been with Chris Eubank Jr. this afternoon. Tough times for him as well, and a tough process to be involved with.
Good afternoon. So I've spent there, obviously just come from Chris. He's hugely disappointed. He was ready, he was on weight, and he was very much looking forward to this weekend. Feelings also go out to each and every single one of the undercard fighters. Remember, it's not just an event, it's a camp for each and every single one of them that they've gone through. This matter was taken out of our hands. The handling of it, we feel, was totally inappropriate, given the rules, and we now look at the plans of rescheduling it.
Thank you, Keller. As we say, it wasn't a decision that was easy. Obviously, for various reasons, we won't be taking questions today, but we will be keeping you up to speed with everything as we move forward with the postponement of this fight. Tickets will be available for customers to refund immediately from the O2 Arena or point of purchase, and we will be back in touch with the media and the public soon in terms of this new scheduled date for this fight. Again, we apologise that we weren't able to give you this great fight on DAZN, but I hope you feel that the correct action has been taken. Thank you for your time today, and we'll see you in due course. Thank you.
So that was Eddie Hearn and of course, Kalle Sauerland, the co-promoter of the event. You know, one of the things I think that is fair to point out, and Declan, I'm going to come to you first, there hasn't been an awful lot of, or any, from what I can see, remorse of the whole situation. It's kind of a lot of talk around processes and procedures and UCAD versus VADA and WADA, but there doesn't ever seem to be any kind of, it's kind of the fight is pulled under duress and there's no kind of ownership of the situation.
I think to be fair to him, and just to play devil's advocate, still he hasn't committed an offence officially. Still waiting for the B sample, all that sort of stuff. So you can't, like, especially Eddie as his promoter, can't really hammer him. Like, the only person whose fault this is, if he has taken anything, is Conor Benn, clearly. But so at that point, it's hard for them to apologise in any way. I see where you're saying. It doesn't seem, no one seems to be sorry.
In an apology sort of way, but the fact that, okay, this happened, and under the circumstances, until we find out what's happening, we feel like it's a good idea to it's kind of, you know, they have no grounds to suspend him. We will be pursuing in court. That sort of like, it's on the offensive as opposed to kind of, okay, guys, look, we believe Conor 100%, and Conor Benn does have full rights to a full investigation.
What do people want? That's what I want to know. What do people want? You know, so we want no drugs and no cheating in any sport. I understand that. So there's loads of footballers and boxers now who've got asthma, who never had asthma before they've gone into a professional, and never had asthma before they started playing for professional football teams. Now they all got asthma because they can open your lungs and blah, 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 and many other things. So just say we never had, we all want that. But what do they want? What do people want? Because everyone's up with pitchforks at the minute, and rightly so, because we want our sport to be, we love boxing, we want no more than me, and we want it to be clean, we want it just to be seen in a good light. But what are they after? No, Conor Benn's taking the drug, if he's taking it. I don't know what adverse me even means, actually. So, you know, I don't know what it means. Sounds like a party to me. But anyway, but whatever. No, it means something, and I don't think it's very good. But what does it actually mean? He's taking the drug. Is adverse finding? No one said he's failed a test. No, VADA haven't said he's failed a test. He said adverse finding, which I think should mean he fails a test. But no one's actually saying the words to thick people like me. Failed drug test, and that's what you want to see. So he'll take all the blame, and if he's taking it, so he should. But what do they want for these other people?
Until that, what do
they
want
off the
British Boxing Board or DAZN or
great
company to work for, by the way,
or
DAZN or Eddie Hearn or Cassola? What do they want off him? I don't know what they want.
To test the B sample in a timely fashion and get to the bottom of it, I think would be a good start.
No, I understand that, but I mean, what do they want now?
What does that mean, Rob? But you're going to test the B sample, as you say, the same piss. Yeah.
But then
same jar. How can it be something different?
Well, then he can get charged.
Then you have if you're like again.
What happens?
Okay, so say that one comes back clean. What happens then?
Then the fight can go ahead.
Yeah, but it's one. Or why is B cleaner than A?
Then there would be an investigation into kind of how, because false positives and contamination, cross contamination
Whatever happens with the B sample.
Yeah, but B can be contaminated, not A. Then can it?
Yeah, and could he have two false positives?
Whatever thing is, they draw the line of what the B comes back on.
Can you argue it?
No, but if the B
as far as
comes
I'm
back
aware,
negative.
B gets divided up as well, and there's not a lot of piss to divide up at that point, right? I mean, I've done enough tests, but I'm not there once it's sealed in a bag and in a post. A's about 2/3, B's about 1/3, and out of that third at the end, I think that's then carved up as well. Some will go back to the fighter to get it tested himself independently. Another proportion of it might get sent to the same lab. Some might get sent to a different lab because that's got newer equipment or a more highly skilled technician or whatnot. And then you're in the realms of contamination. Like,
But once you split it up, then you're taking the risk.
Well, yeah. So
of that.
with the B sample, so what happens?
Sure that's, I might,
There is
a
there's a request for the B sample to be tested, and then what usually happens is the fighter who's produced the positive A sample has the right to have a representative from the team, which is usually a doctor, a physician, an expert in the field, to be present at the opening of the B sample to ensure no cross contamination, that everything is done above board. So that's what happens with the B sample, which is why, as Dex said there, the B sample ultimately is what kind of it's kind of.
Do they put that for a more rigorous test?
Well, it's done with everybody in, so everybody has to sign off. Everything's done properly. Blah blah blah.
If
this
that
is how
passes
things
and
done.
A failed, why does B supersede A?
I
I
mean,
think they have to draw the line somewhere. And like if it comes, so that comes back and that's negative and there's no Clomid in it, he hasn't failed anything. He's not charged. But if they're both positive,
but then as an organisation, you have to question.
Then you just
VADA, don't you? You'd be
Yeah,
100%, of course, yeah.
Ruin my life.
And this is part of, and this is
Definitely.
part of the whole thing where I think hopefully one positive thing to come out of this is that there is more uniformity between the different testing agencies, and there is more, like if you produce a positive A sample, then within a certain period of time, 48 hours, 7 days, that B sample must be, gone through and tested with all of the present parties and all of that. And if it's within a certain time between the fight, then the fight has to be suspended. And I think if there was that uniformity between the different testing agencies and the commissions, then you have something, and you don't have. I mean, ultimately, the fight was, and I think we all agree, rightly postponed, pending a full investigation. But then you don't have the potential for things to kind of, it's UCAB, well, it's VADA. If we keep it quiet, we do this. There is a very specific, in black and white way of going through things to ensure that these delays aren't taking place, and you don't get situations where, on the surface of things at least, it looks as though the fight was intended to be pushed forward regardless until that story broke.
it's clearly like behind the times, boxing, and the dopers or the people who may be able to provide PEDs are well ahead of the game and well ahead of the testing, clearly. Like, that's without question. And speaking to Harlem earlier, he's never been tested for anything because they don't have VADA at that level. There's no point in paying the money for VADA in their fights.
More than his purse, probably.
Exactly. And then UCAD, he's not a championship level fighter in their eyes, not deemed as such, who doesn't get tested. So he doesn't. The people he fights could be taking anything. So what he would like, and what they should think about doing, because it is so damaging to the sport, is at some point there needs to be some sort of, and it's money, isn't it? And that's the problem. There's enough of it sloshing about at the top end. We talk about with ex-boxers as well, extracting some sort of money, some sort of tax from somewhere in the sport to do universal testing of some description. The WBC do the clean boxing program, but as far as we can tell,
it's massively underfunded.
It's massively underfunded, and therefore people barely get tested. Even if you're on that, you might get a couple of random tests. If you're in the UCAD whereabouts, like you were, George, then you get tested. You might get tested at any point. But if you're not, and you're not British, and you're in America, and you haven't paid for VADA, you never get tested. So obviously, if you want to get an advantage, and your integrity on that side is well, everyone else is doing it.
And that makes you think. And I'm just saying this out there with no knowledge at all. Pretty much my life in general. But a lot of these people, the boxers, when they have training camps in other countries,
what are they going there for?
It might be for the fresh air and because it's away from home, but it also might be because you can just pack loads of gear into your body. If that's the term.
You'll be surprised. Like that whereabouts. I was on whereabouts. I think from around fighting Frudge, even though I never won a world title, but just because I was so high
in the WBC rankings as well. So would you been subjected to the clean boxing program when you boxed Badou Jack?
I think I was by then, but it only just come out that year for WBC.
They're the only organisation that have that, by the way.
Yeah, they are. And look, we can. Sorry, we kind of interrupted. I know with the WBC being underfunded, at least they have something. But anyway,
really.
Shut up.
I think there was.
So where did they track you down to?
There was about 12 world champions at the time when I was in and around becoming world champion.
In your weight?
No, that
was just WBA.
Yeah, no, from Britain, right? And I think the British Boxing Board of Control only had enough money to put like half a dozen, maybe 10 people on the whereabouts. And whereabouts is where you have to. It's a ball ache. I get it. I know why people don't like it, because you have to fill in where you're going to be every day. Like, because they could show up at your house at 6 a.m. They could show up at the gym at 10 o'clock. the truth is they always showed up at your house at 6 a.m. because they knew you were there. And if you're not gallivanting around sleeping in someone else's house every weekend, you'll be all right just, living at home. They ring your bell first thing.
Never caught me then.
The dogs, the dog's barking. Woke the baby out. The missus is not happy. But you go downstairs. You do your test. I'm thinking, wow, there's world champions right now from Britain who are not signed up for drug testing, and it's like, and there's a demand for guys at fringe level, domestic British Championship level. I mean, they got them guys. I think once you get to British Championship level or Championship level, you'll get tested on the day, like on fight night. But as I say, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. By then, if you've cycled something, you wouldn't leave it in your system for the fucking fight.
Did they ever test you back-to-back days?
Yeah. It could come. It can come whenever. And I was
signed
signed up.
Got tested on a Tuesday. Would they ever come on Wednesday? The next day?
They, rarely because it costs money. But I was on UCAD and VADA, so sometimes I'd have them a day apart, and they make it like it was totally random. But a press conference to announce the fight, they're going to be at your door within 2 days, all the time. If you kick off and moan about fucking anti-doping, if you moan about such and such heavyweights just tested positive. In an iFilm interview, they're at your house the next day waking you up for a test.
There's lots of fight that's going to be getting a knock.
One of the ironic things, Chris Eubank Jr., after the fight had been postponed, had UCAD waiting for him straight afterwards. He had to give a sample, which was just like it's sort of a farcical, really, considering
UCAD
everything.
got to be feeling a bit, because this guy's been caught by VADA, but he's passed all of theirs quite easily.
Yeah, UCAD have been thrown under the bus in my eyes, in that we passed UCAD, so you're thinking, well, how fucking hard is it to fail a UCAD test?
We're going to come
and then they go through what you're telling us what the fucking drug is. You're like, oh my god, how's he passed UCAD?
Yeah.
That big baby Miller's coming over here now, isn't he? Yeah. I'm going to join the British Boxing Board and get tested by UCAD.
But these are they're all valid questions. There are questions that we don't have the answers to at the minute. The timeline of the test, when were those UCAD tests? When was the WBC test? When was the VADA test? Sorry, WBC and Clean Boxing Program. We don't have the answers to that yet, which I think obviously it's fair to say that this is still very much a developing story. But one of the people that we are going to discuss is somebody who's become pretty prominent in discussions over the last 48 hours, which is Dr. Usman Sajjad. Hopefully I've pronounced the name properly there. Who is a doctor. He has a license under the British Boxing Board of Control. Thanks, George.
Who knows? There's a bloke called Radio Rahim.
He's not like Dr. Dre.
He's not a radio. He's good at his job. He's not a radio. So I was shocked at.
But he is also somebody who worked for Alphagenics and specialised in testosterone replacement therapy.
Nice.
Spoke very openly about circumventing drug tests. I mean, we all see all of these old historic interviews that kind of be brought back up, and he was speaking quite openly about the ways in which. I think the words that he used were, you have to be an idiot to fail a doping test in the UK.
Well, this is my point about the doping. The dopers will always be miles ahead of the testers. That's without question. And the way that he broke it down, anyone who hasn't seen that interview, I don't know what the channel, I think it's a tennis channel, but it's an old interview from maybe last year when no one knew who he was and he wasn't in the public eye whatsoever. And it's fascinating stuff. Really, if you don't know much about doping and you think, what is all this about? There's a lot of detail there, and the way he talks about the testosterone and how it changes in camp, and the timings that you'll never get someone at your door between 11 and 7. So if you take a substance that can be out of your system by then, you can take it whenever you want, because even if they turn up at 6 a.m, it's gone by then. And the way he's talking about it is incredible. By the way, at no point is anyone pointing the finger at him saying, well, this is obviously what you've done with Conor Benn. It's just the fact is this person knows all this stuff. I dare say there's many like him who know all this stuff. Like Victor Conte went to prison for a doping scandal. He's now heads up a supplement company because he's an expert. Yeah. So there are experts out there. So if you want someone to help you with that, and you think this is the way I'm going to go or need to go, there are people out there that you can access, and that's a concern, isn't it? And they're always going to be ahead of the game. But you've got to go and watch that interview, because some of the stuff he's saying about testosterone and stuff, it just rings very true now.
It's jaw-droppingly open. It really is. And
he said between 80 and 90% of athletes are, and you'd be surprised who's on
but
it.
anyone who gives a percentage of anything is talking out their ass. I do it all the time.
100% of the time.
I'm 100% right 70% of the time. But seriously, how does he know that? But I would imagine there's a lot more than what we think. Or unless you think there's loads, and there's probably a lot less than what you think. I think that's probably what it is.
Probably 70 or 80% of the people he's working with.
Yeah.
Well, by the sounds of it, according to Twitter, 100% of the people he's working with are on drugs 80% of the time.
And you know that they're ahead of the game, you say, Deck.
Yeah.
They'll be doing something, and then it'll take a while before the anti-doping catch up. And then all of a sudden, a whole team will go down with something, whether it's a cycling team or a sprint team or whatnot, because they've all been doping, right? But somehow manipulating the system for it to be fine. And then they get busted because either they change the rule because they found this something else. But whenever it's a sport that's not boxing or not a combat sport that can cause harm, it's just not nice. But then when it's boxing, it's dangerous. Like it's one-on-one dangerous. So I don't know.
Also, all of his website been taken down.
So his website was taken down. His social media was taken down. He did have a list of clients that he worked with. One of those clients is the current WBC and lineal heavyweight champion of the world, Tyson Fury. We caught up with him in Doncaster, of all places. Here's what he had to say about working with Dr. Usman Sajjad.
This weekend we was due to see a massive fight between Conor Benn and Eubank Jr. That isn't going ahead now because of a positive finding in a VADA test on Conor Benn's behalf. Just want to get your thoughts on that entire situation.
Again, it's like I said to the other guy, it's none of my business what happens to other fighters' careers and stuff, so I don't have any opinion on it.
No, you don't have an opinion on it. One thing people have been curious by is there's a doctor called Usman Sajjad who said he's worked with you. He's got you listed on his website, and according to online, he's someone who specialises in testosterone enhancement. I just wanted to see if you've worked together, if you could confirm that, and what he's like as a character.
Usman's a good guy. I've known him about a year now. He works with quite a lot of boxers, and whatever happens, I'd definitely say it's nothing to do with Usman.
So you've got no concerns on that behalf, and you'd say categorically he wouldn't have been involved?
He will be working with me for my next fight on December the 5th, so yeah, I trust him 100%.
So that was Tyson Fury addressing questions put to him by Andy Purwell. Shout out Andy Purwell, great interview with Tyson Fury. Again, kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier, what we really expect him to say. And again, worth noting that everybody is due to, due process and certainly not accusing Dr. Usman Sajjad of anything. He has a right to clear his name, but it is concerning that somebody who seemingly has such an extensive knowledge of how to cheat tests and how to raise testosterone in the body of fighters is, involved with so many fighters at the top level, George.
Yeah, sure, but maybe he's just made an error to describe that he knows how to cheat. Maybe if you are a doctor, you're supposed to know. You're supposed to know what's right and what's wrong. So, but yeah, I don't know. A bit bizarre from Fury there saying, yeah, well, he knows it all, but he's all right by me and I'll be with him real soon. So, and he's obviously, has he been working with Conor? Yeah, is that what we know? So, yeah.
It's a funny coincidence I found with the what he was talking about and testosterone and the timings and then what happened here. But to be fair, I'd never even heard of this geezer until a few weeks ago. So it's hard then to sit here and be like, well, he's obviously doing wrong and stuff.
Yeah,
but,
and again,
and like you said, George, you would hope that a doctor in working in the field would know the ins and outs of it, right or wrong.
How much do you trust your people? Boxers are paranoid. I'm certainly from my generation are really paranoid. But so I tend to think I wouldn't trust anyone to give me stuff like powders, and it was different back then, of course. So I suppose people were cheating then, but we didn't have much knowledge. Everyone has more knowledge now, which is fantastic. Everyone trains better, trains smarter, but with that you get more people come involved, and they give you different options about how to get even better. And you also want to bet yourself. How much do you trust people about things you don't know? So someone's saying take this supplement. So they say the word supplement, so that supplement's illegal. You take the supplement. What I'm trying to say, did Conor Benn take something unknowingly? I find it hard to believe that you put anything in your body without knowing what it is. But if you trust the person who's telling you,
there is that awful interview though. Again, people always come up with these receipts, and we saw it on Twitter where he's talking about, I think, Jarrell Miller before he boxes anti-Joshua Conor Benn, that is, and it's eerie, isn't it, when you listen to the words that he says and kind of compare and draw the parallels between his own situation against Chris Eubank Jr., where he says, look, my S&C coach doesn't even let me take this without knowing what's in it. And, you know, when Fraser Clark, who's somebody we caught up afterwards, of course, gone through the amateur setup, Olympic testing, and he said, you know, you are responsible for what goes into your body at all times.
Yeah,
and when it comes to situations like this, it is pretty black and white.
no, you'll ultimately have to pay the price, and I'm just saying, like if he got caught cheating, which he obviously has, if he got caught with taking drugs in it, then he has to pay the price. Of course he does. Do whatever that price is, he deserves it. That's how it is. And whether it be stupidity or just plain, you know, negligence or whatever it is, that's all on him. But I just wondered, how much is it? Do you just trust people? Because bear in mind, you might trust somebody. Like if someone I'm trying to think of someone I like, and I don't like anyone. But if someone tells me that George is a scumbag, right? Someone I know tells me George is a scumbag, then I don't want to come here today. I don't make my own. No,
Is that why
try you because you're not quite hard, George.
That's why I was late.
No, someone tells me. Yeah, that's why I was late. I was like that. No, do you know what I mean? Or someone tells me George's a nice bloke. Someone asks me what's George Groves like, and I don't really know you. But I'll go, no, but I don't know you. Like, no, I met you a handful of times, didn't you? But I'll go, you've been lovely to me always. But I'll go, George is lovely, and then you're lovely to him. But if I say, oh no, I pat you on, you say you were horrible to me today, no, and I go, no, he's a wanker, George Groves, and then they'll just frame that up.
Pod though, please.
Just frame that up. Yeah, listen to his pod. He's a wanker.
Podcast, absolute shit.
Then I tell people that, and then they just take my word for it. I wonder whether that would be the same with. No, whatever he gives you. Trust him.
Did you have a doctor in your camp though, George?
Long-winded that was.
Not a doctor, no. I got a physio who, take care of the injuries, but I think he was like doctor qualified. I can just tell by the prescription. He could write you a prescription for something.
Clomid?
Yeah, not over the counter. Not one of them ones. Yeah, no. And then we did have a doctor at the end, but come in and prescribe supplements.
Was that for your shoulder?
Even then, no. Yeah, well, training with Shane, a girl, but not from boxing, not from sport.
This is what I mean. You would trust Shane's judgment.
Yeah.
And Shane might get it wrong.
And even, exactly. But even then, like the stuff that she would recommend, you're like, all right, and then you go and do your own research. Yeah. It's not hard. If you're going to order something that the ingredient, you might not be able to get everything from Holland & Barrett because most of their supplements are not really
pricey as well.
So you might go to a specialist one, but
they were going to sponsor your podcast.
I like Holland. But then you can literally go through the ingredients, and if you trust that it's been made in a clinical factory, nice and clean, you can go online. It's not hard. You go online. I can't remember what the website is, and you can check the ingredients. And if it's not on the banned substance list, you are fine. Yeah, you are fine. If
due diligence, that's all it is.
And that would essentially be it. I mean, there was like my physio. I trusted him. He looks after a whole host of a lot of people, but he just wouldn't tell you about anything. He was like the ultimate professional. And there was times where I can't think of an example, but there might have been a treatment that I could have had when I turned pro in 2008, and then that became a banned substance. So he's like, we can't do that no more. We'll do this, and it's like, oh great, and he would be the guy who would tell me, right, if you don't take nothing, and if something does come your way, then go online and check it here. So I don't know. You were told that as an amateur. Do you know what I mean? You're told that when you're boxing for England. So there is kind of no excuse, and you don't want to put. I definitely wouldn't put blind faith in anything. If a doctor was linked to an athlete who had tested positive for something, I'd want to distance myself from that.
Yeah, even if he wasn't.
You've got Fury there, who has tested positive for a banned substance before in the past, vouching for a doctor who I don't know how linked he is now.
He's involved with the camp. I think one kind of caveat is clomifene can stay in your body for up to 4 months afterwards as well. So there is a chance, and again, due process will hopefully get to the bottom of this, that he wasn't involved because he was brought into the camp, I believe, at the start of August. So there is a timeline whereby it could have been the Clomifene, could have been in Benn's system before then. But yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not here to throw
Just
allegations.
just got it for the legal eagles, George.
Throw
You know?
allegations at anyone, definitely not. But no, yeah.
So George Groves Boxing Club's making loads of money. So any lawsuits, direct over to George Groves.
That went quiet. That went quite quick, didn't it?
I want to be here.
No.
Yeah.
There was another interview that I saw with another channel, I think, and someone said to him, "Why do you need a doctor for in your camp?" And he's like, "Well, I might get a cold or something." And he does what other GPs do. I found it a little bit bizarre, but that's why I asked you if you ever had one. Because maybe when you're at that level, you're like, actually, he ain't going to go and sit in his doctor's, is he? So it kind of makes sense. But
we're going to get a mission out you, George.
Yeah.
No,
no, you have a physio to keep you healthy.
Tests and stuff like that as well. But you wouldn't think somebody needs that when they're moving up in weight by 10 pounds, you know? But yeah, having somebody in there to do like a correct weights and things like that.
You'll have whatever helps you. That's the truth. Legally, you'll have whatever helps you. And if you're earning millions, then the more you can have, the better you get, and you can afford it. So why wouldn't you? You'd have your own training camp, your own gym. Some people who can't afford it, they train on their own and they have nothing. And that's how, and they don't have no gloves and things like that, and whatever it goes on. If you've got all the money, you'd have the best equipment, the best help, the physios, the dietitians, and all that if you can afford it. And a doctor. If I don't know why that helps you. If it helps you, you have a doctor as well. And the best chemist if you're breaking rules. That's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and if you had a drug sheet, you're gonna get the very best man who can get you through it, who get you through all the tests and give you all the best drugs, make you the strongest, most powerful cheating animal on the planet.
He's gone to ground now as well, and I know there's journalists trying to track him down to do an interview with him. See, like, you're under heat, like you're under real scrutiny here, even if it's only on boxing Twitter. But like,
it won't go away either.
It won't go away.
It's getting bigger and bigger. And
so
it's national.
It's national news. So it's like the way he's got a right to reply. People are just chucking everything at him. It must be him. Look what he said 6 months ago. He turned up at the camp and now he's failed. He's got a right to reply. So what he needs to do is come and address it. But maybe he won't. You maybe don't want to do that. And legally it's difficult. And he might think, well, I haven't done anything. So what are you talking about? Like, leave me out of it. I'm a doctor. But he's part of the narrative, clearly.
And also he's linked with lots of other fighters. And that puts everyone else
That's a problem,
into a light, potential light. Boxers who haven't been linked with any sort of drugs before. I've seen some of the pictures on the website. And I was thinking, I hope not.
And I must say, everyone's vouching for him. And if he was plying everyone with Clomid, you wouldn't be going on Twitter going, this guy is the best. You'd just shut up, wouldn't you?
It just sounds too much like chlamydia.
Yeah,
it's
tough
sneak it inside thinking, we've all been there. I haven't, love.
Did I come to you first? What next for Conor Benn?
I mean, they got to test a B sample, haven't they? They got to determine. We have to determine. I mean, we don't, but we have to determine. Yeah, if he's been popped for taking a PED, and then he's going to suffer the consequences. But I don't know. In all of these situations, I always like to hope that this is some sort of mix-up and some sort of problem somewhere, because he's a young guy who's done everything right as far as we could see, and he's going only one way, and he was set to be a huge star regardless of this fight. And if he fails and he's taken this drug, like we've been reading, and he could get a 4-year ban, like from UCAD, and you think, where does he go from there? And that's rightly or wrongly, for whatever he's done, that will totally alter his life completely. And no, we don't want to see that. He's worked hard and he's got himself in this position. So I hope that this is all false and wrong, and it comes out at the end of this. But until we know about the B-SAM, until we determine in some way what's happened here, whether he's taken it knowingly or not, then we're all in limbo, no more so than him. And we got spare a thought for him as well, especially if he's totally innocent. This is mad what's going on to him. It must be absolute torture.
It's sustained with him forever now.
100%.
Even if you haven't done it, that's how it is. It's awful.
So I don't know. And this fight, like Harlem said, how would they ever make this fight again? Really? Even if he's totally clean, could they really do it now again? It's totally tainted now. Eubank-Benn.
It's just boxing, mate.
Boxing this
era, especially now, it'll still sell. And it's a bigger story now because people outside the sport, it reached outside the sport, not as much as I thought it would. I didn't think they used the dads as much, actually. But it still reached outside the sport, but it will more so now. I think ultimately the publicity has been big enough now. That morbid curiosity, people would tune in Saturday more, because of that what happens. People almost want to see it, don't they? Oh, so if something goes wrong, I've got to watch this. That's how sick people are. That's the truth. So yeah, it still sells, but when does it happen? Because if he has been caught, then he should get banned. That's just and that goes for anyone who takes a drug. It should be banned. But we've seen lots of fighters who haven't been banned, really been banned. The biggest boxer on the planet, Canelo, got a 6-month ban. We won boxing for 6 months. Is that what he had? 6 months, maybe? Was that right? And so he won boxing for 6 months anyway. Did nothing. And did he pay a penalty? I don't know. He paid a couple of quid. No, he's tight. He means the cash, doesn't he? No, he paid a couple of quid. There's nothing to him. And so there was no. I mean, bigger names need to be put on the cross more.
Well, look at Joel Miller. Everything.
He did
signed
have
an
a
ESPN
license at the time. So, and then he since came back, failed another test, and then did get banned. But
he signed an ESPN contract.
Yeah,
on the back of it, because he all of a sudden.
But then
people know who he is.
Again, and then.
But what I mean, that's just.
But he did get it. Yeah, there was no deterrent, which I think is
stupid on stupid for him, wasn't it? But I mean, no. Once he that test, it put a bigger light on him than him getting the Joshua fight. And all of a sudden, then he's a star almost, and you sign him, and everyone wants to see this big drug cheat get battered. But he don't care, because he might be a good fighter. I didn't really watch him actually, but
I think you mentioned Canelo there. I think again why it's different to the Benn situation is that there was a precedent with contaminated meat in Mexico. It had been a story in the past.
Yeah, of course,
the Olympic football team. Whereas you mentioned there about the UCAD ban, which was raised as from 2 years to 4 years in 2015. It is a 4-year ban unless you can show that there is an extenuating circumstance and a reason why it's in your system, and that's ultimately going to be where Conor Benn's kind of next fight is going to be, to clear his name and prove that he is a clean athlete, as he says. George, what positive lessons, if any, can boxing take from this? What would you like to see boxing do differently, considering everything that we've seen over the last week or so?
I don't know.
Fucking pointless, really, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the worry is that two things. Everyone is just going to think all boxers are dirty, and boxers might think, well, he's cheating, I need to cheat. I'm not going to quote Jarrell Miller, but I'm pretty sure he thought Joshua's cheating, so I'm going to cheat. I mean, he took absolutely everything, but that would be a major concern. And all of a sudden, then you're going to be paranoid, and Barry's always paranoid. I'm usually paranoid.
What did you say that for?
I'd be paranoid about it. You said it earlier.
What did you see him hit me then?
You're going to be paranoid about who's working with who. Is it not just a fighter? Is it a stable? Is it the coach? Is it the promoter? Is it who? Where does it end if you're going to be paranoid? And I don't know what goodness can come out of it. And at the moment, I can't see anything. I just genuinely can't really see anything good that's come out of it. Sad. It's very sad. Disappointing.
Predictable.
You think, yeah?
I mean, not the drugs, boxing doing something like the fuck itself up.
The whole kind of drug testing, boxer fails drug test, not really it's not a massive story, is it? Let's be honest. You've mentioned Canelo, you've mentioned Jarrell Miller. It happens, but I think that 24 hours from the story breaking, or probably longer than that, sort of 30 odd hours from the story breaking and then the fight actually being off, that window of time, and then of course what we found out, the 10 days prior to that, that's surely the big concern here. Yeah,
it is a big concern, and it's a bit like cycling. For me, I don't really care for cycling. I'm a casual sport.
You're on a line bike every week.
Yeah, apart from that, but that's because you get a little booster.
Oh, fair enough.
Big shout out line bike, but. There was a point when it felt like all cyclists are doping. If you're any good, you must be taking drugs. The crap ones don't take drugs, so you're not in the tour, whatever it is. That's me not knowing it. Total casual viewpoint. Cycling is totally irrelevant to me because it's just loaded drugged up cyclists. The worry is that people think that about boxing. They think this is an irrelevant sport. All these people are drugged to the gills and then knocking lumps out of each other. Why would I want to watch that? When that may or may not be the case. But and then the sport just diminishes even further
because it's
to
those
nothing.
Casuals that you need.
That's the key. We know that, and that's what Conor Benn was providing, was that crossover appeal. And as soon as people start going, boxers, yeah, all drug cheats. What's the point in this?
Did you see that fight that they was going to have with Chris Eubank and Nigel Benn's sons?
Exactly. And the sport then goes and like shrinks to even like smaller than it is now. Look, Ben Eubank 2, 15 million people watched it on ITV. How many people would have watched that the weekend? We don't know, 200,000, whatever it is. But like that just shows how much the sport
600,000 to 1 million.
Yeah. But that shows how much it's shrunk already.
And also, those people are not going to, like the people who have kind of seen this come across as national news, they're not going to be thinking about the B sample and the difference between UCAD and VADA and all of that stuff. They're looking at it from a very kind of top line perspective. And then they go on with their, their lives like normal people.
And they go, well, at least we get Joshua Fury. Oh, no, that's not happening either. Stupid sport. I'll watch football instead. That's the problem, innit?
Gonna throw it over to DAZN's official representative here, of Barry Jones. Much has been made about the investment into the show. I think we all sat around here, myself, you, and Andy Clark, and spoke about this being an event that DAZN really needed. Something that had that crossover appeal that Deck was talking about there. Good Morning Britain. There was a documentary that was due to air on the BBC, which of course was cancelled on the day that the story broke, but without costing yourself any further business, not the ideal outcome for DAZN.
Roomy. No, it's a nightmare for him, isn't it? And I don't know where they go now, because that was a make or break for him. But it was for the UK market. It was their we're here moment. I think if I had extra subscribers to build their base, because obviously they want to go. I don't know their business plan. Like I do little bits for them now and again.
Distancing himself already.
Yeah. Sky. Great one to work for Sky. See my podcast on Sky. But I still think it was going to help them grow, massively help them grow. Because once you get people to subscribe, even if they subscribe for the fight, they stay anyway, and they might watch the next fight. That's how Box Nation grabbed a load of people when they got the Canelo Golovkin fight, or better than that, the Hay Chisora fight, which of course was a controversy over that, but non-drug related. But so and then they keep your subscribers for that, and I think then you build other sports, and then I think they would have grown from that, and then other big events would have appeared. So they need to find another one, which I'm sure they will, but it's a kick in the teeth. And I imagine the relationship with them and the promoter won't be as great right now, because again, what were they all doing? Because I think they were caught up in the mayhem. Ultimately, they took a step back, and they went, and hopefully, I think they went, we can't do this. They must have when they cancelled it, because they were digging in. Like a lot of boxing people do, you just dig in and we'll just fight through it. And I was hoping it was going to go ahead, selfishly, because I was working. And it sounds horrible. And I had no care about the health of anyone, except, I got a mortgage to pay next month. So if I do DAZN on Saturday and I do a podcast with BBC on the Friday at the weigh-in, that's a good week for me. And when I did one going ahead, I was gutted for myself, first and foremost, being totally selfish. No, that's true. And then I thought, oh shit, it's not going to, bloody hell. No one the news that he might have failed the drug test. I knew all that, and I went, shit, I hope it goes ahead. And then I sort of read a realisation then about 10 minutes later and went, what am I on about?
Yeah, well, you took the step.
And imagine what they're feeling like.
I wanted that to go ahead. Yeah. I wanted, regardless of anyone, bollocks to anyone else, just think about me. So imagine what they're like when they're in it. So I would give them that much of a leeway. Yeah. But don't excuse it. That's as well. You always have to, with things like that, I think it should be almost like a reset button. You go, this is done. You walk self-destruct button, you press and walk away from it and blow all the money. It's easy for me to say, because I'm now investing millions into it, which have been. I don't know if that gets lost, or I don't know what happens to all that money that I've spent. I don't know where that goes. Or they recruit that, I don't know how it works, but it's a big blow. We all think about the fighters, and then about the main card, so about poor Chris Eubank Jr, of course. But he's already a rich man.
Yeah, the undercard.
But the undercard, and everyone around it. I didn't earn. I'm not a rich man. He's all right. He didn't. He was working. But he's a rich man, isn't he?
We lost quite a lot of money last week.
We also made some people have gained, some journalists have gained from it, because it's been a bigger story than the fight itself.
Definitely not us.
But definitely not. It's always been a problem for broadcasters and boxing, hasn't it? Because at any point the fight could fall out of bed on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and you're like, what are we supposed to put on TV now? It doesn't happen with football. So you're like, it's a safe pair of hands. It's like David Hay when he was supposed to box Tyson Fury twice. Falls out of bed late. And they're like, well, what are we supposed to put on TV? We just ploughed all this money into it. And that's why broadcasters are like...
Yeah.
That's a big
really?
concern. You kind of factor in that sort of thing, and then the way in which it was handled afterwards. And like boxing is becoming more... I don't know, it has changed over recent years, and you're starting to, with your Joshuas and stuff, I mean, Joshua's kind of an isolated incident where he brings like these blue chip brands and people who wouldn't ordinarily be interested in boxing. And then you have these things happen for such a high profile event as well. Like, if this was Ben Van Heerden or Ben Algieri, okay, it would have been a story.
They would have got a replacement, though, and that's the problem with this fight in particular, because you could have quite happily got Felix Cash and been like, right, well, you'll box on the undercard, and if there's anything in the main event, you can step in and fight. But no one's going to buy that on DAZN. No one's going to want to turn up because they're there for Ben Eubank. That's the point. Whereas a smaller level fight, you could have like with like Takam stepping in instead of Pulev when he boxed Joshua. Like when the opponent is the opponent, that's fine. But it's a problem in a fight like that where you can't chuck in a replacement. UFC would have done it.
We've spoke about what potentially comes next to Conor Benn. I think we all agree, and kind of an extensive investigation into him. He'll hope to clear his name. But George, going to come to you for your old adversary, Mr. Eubank Jr., who I think he's in a very, very difficult week. He's kind of come out with things with his reputation somewhat enhanced, I guess, in a strange way. What would you like to see next for him? Do you think he revisits this? Does he try and box Golovkin? What next?
I don't know. He was calling for this Conor Benn fight before Conor Benn was, and why wouldn't you? I'd be up for fighting a welterweight or a light middleweight, and then can get paid more money than I would fighting a legitimate middleweight.
Jamie Cox, mate. I mean, come on.
Yeah, unbeaten, big puncher, Swindon
legend.
Swindon legend.
Punch,
Got bad hands though.
Jamie Cox.
Jamie Cox.
I think he's
bare knuckle
He's
boxing.
doing bare knuckle.
Yeah.
Fight Conor Benn.
Who could fight?
I like Jamie.
I'd watch it.
let's probably put on that for 1 minute. Yeah.
Eubank Jr. Jamie Cox. Bare knuckle.
For the George Groves wooden spoon medal.
Oh,
there we go.
No, I don't know. You've thrown that to me like they do on Channel 5, and I've got to now rack my brain about the middleweight division.
Would you like to see Eubank Jr. versus Golovkin, or are you interested in seeing the Ben fight again if they can make it happen and all the mechanics and everything falls into place? I
just don't see how that can happen now. Boxing, you always lives to surprise you, but I just don't see how that can get tied up and put together quick enough. But at the same time, I don't know what Eubank wouldn't have got paid at the weekend, so he'll want to fight. He signed to Wasserman, but sort of bigger than their Channel 5 deal. So in DAZN might put something together for him.
Sky
might go back to Sky. Yeah. It's got to be an interesting, meaningful fight, unless he goes out on the KSI bill and fights a YouTuber.
He wants to fight Jake Paul, doesn't he?
Jake Paul.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. That'd be great.
You sort of can't blame him, to be honest. Like, you can't blame none of them for just like the boxing's just a muddle, isn't it? You don't know what's what anymore. What's reality? The YouTube stuff is not an issue for me if they keep it to themselves, because it's like white collar boxing. There's no, but it's being broadcast to a wider audience. Well, that's fantastic. They fill the O2, it's their own little thing. But with Jake Paul, he's crossing over to the real pros, and that don't make any sense until he boxes a real pro. And then if he does and he wins, he's a professional. You can't say anything but that. But you can't blame Chris Eubank won the box Jake Paul, because again, that's another really on paper. He's boxing a novice for millions.
Load of money.
So it's just unbelievable, isn't it? Like who wouldn't want to do that? Like you just have to, wouldn't you? I thought he would beat Conor Benn. I thought he was a massive favourite, so he beats Conor Benn, and even though it shouldn't do anything to his middleweight rankings, he would have got a world title fight off that. Just the way boxing is, because it was a high profile fight, and he would have looked really good in it, I think. And the way Chris fights as well, he would have made an entertaining fight, because Conor would have had some success, and Chris would have quite enjoyed that, I feel. And then he wins the fight at a point, so I think stops him later on, where Ben's just absolutely knackered because he tried so hard. If it would have happened, unless he was full of drugs, and he just would have run right through. No, but either, and then he would have got a world title fight off that. Unfortunate for Chris Eubank Jr., he got Charlo, and he's got Golovkin. Golovkin might be slower than he and older now, but he's still a hard man to beat. So, you know, I still struggle we win the world title anyway, to be honest.
Don't have Andy Clark here this week to kind of to force through the narrative.
Yeah.
We are running short on time, so Deck, going to come to you.
Go on.
Any interest in seeing Eubank Jr versus Benn? If not, what next for Chris Eubank Jr.?
I would like to see the Golovkin fight. I think it makes a lot of sense for both of them if Golovkin's going to carry on. And I think it's one of them where if Eubank loses, he just disappears, just lives his life. I feel like he's almost on the cusp of that. He's a bit like Amir Khan in that sense. When Khan would have a fight, but you'd also think, if the fight doesn't happen, it doesn't really matter. He's doing his own thing. That's how I've always felt with Eubank. He is crossover and he is box office. So he's not. I don't see him entertaining this idea of like campaigning to try and get anything. He's going to take, and it's like what you say. He wins the Benn fight, even though it's a welterweight and it does nothing for the rankings. His profile rises again. Love to see the Golovkin fight. Not so much the Charlo fight. I don't think the narrative is not. But if he beats Golovkin, then yeah. But when you look at his career the last few years, it's been slightly strange anyway. Like he had the Korobov fight, which he won off the back of the shoulder going and stuff like that. It's been slightly weird. And he had the Jones Jr. thing. We don't know what's going to happen there.
Beat James the Gal. George?
Beat James the Gal. But that should have been the launch pad for his career, and it never really happened. So that's why I wonder if there's anything. I think it'll only work when it works for him. Golovkin is one that will do it.
He could get a world title shot next, even having that fight.
Yeah. The by all accounts, that was on the table for him.
And even if he beat Conor Benn, he's the biggest name outside the heavyweight divisions in the UK.
Yeah.
He could be in, because Sky's in a bit of a hole at the moment in terms of pay-per-view. He could be in a A-side pay-per-view fighting a relatively bum name.
Yeah.
It won't be, we're only going pay-per-view with Junior unless it's Golovkin or likewise. If he'd had the Benn fight, he could have then gone, in my opinion, he probably could have gone straight back to Sky and had a pay-per-view fight all on his own terms.
Yeah.
I think the options were for him while the Benn fight was kind of in the background was Liam Smith moving up from 54 to 160, Janibek Alam Connolly.
He's busy now.
Yeah, he's boxing Denzel Bentley. Something for us to discuss on another day. Yep. And then the Conor Benn fight. So it was on the table where he could have had those big marquee fights because, of course, the name and the drawing power. I think
you tend to think that Eubank doesn't have the same aspirations as fight. Like you made all your money before you won a world title. So this sounds great, but if you never won that world title, you finish your career and you'd always, but you got that world title shot. You won a world title, and well deserved. And then you ticked every box. You're great for you. You earned the money, the fame, but you got the more importantly for you at that time, you wanted that world title. He seems like he doesn't want that.
Yeah.
He doesn't need that, but he might. We're judging him from what his persona, like he just wants to make money and be famous. But he might genuinely want to be a world champion just as much as you did or I did, and so he might not be happy just going away with loads of money because he's got more money, I would think, that I can think of than any boxer who's never boxed for a world title, a genuine world title. I can't think of any other fighter who's never boxed for a world title who's earned as much money as he has.
I just feel like he won't get out of bed for something that isn't significant, and that's just the way that his career's gone. Golovkin represents that, and a couple of others maybe, but for the most part, what does it matter to him?
Well, we look forward to finding out more about this situation.
Dillian
Box
White.
for a world title though. Box for a WBC title.
So was Junior. He boxed me for a world title. Never won a world title.
Oh, you was a world title
box
fight.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Barry.
No, so it was that super
Never
series.
winning a world title.
It was that super series.
Outside the heavyweights, I think. Anyway, we have 2 minutes left here, so we are going to have to kind of draw an end to things. Sorry, we don't have longer. That's what happens when one of your panelists doesn't turn up on time. But anyway, thanks very much for everybody stopping by and trying to decipher a pretty crazy week in British boxing. Thank you, George Groves, Deck Taylor, Barry, whatever. Thanks very much for stopping by, and we'll catch up with you next time.